Welcome, aspirants! Today, we're diving into a really critical topic for your polity prep, the constant power struggle between the center and the states. It's this ongoing tug-of-war that really defines our federal system. So, let's get right to it.
You know, if you look at the history of this relationship, there's a really clear dividing line. For the first couple of decades after independence, things were pretty smooth sailing. We call it the era of cooperation. But then, boom, 1967 happens, and everything changes. That year kicks off an era of confrontation that, honestly, is still playing out today.
So the big question is, what on earth happened in 1967? This wasn't just some small shift. It was a massive political earthquake that completely redrew the map of Indian federalism. And the reason for this earthquake comes down to one thing: politics. Before 67, it was pretty simple. The Congress Party was in power at the center and in most of the states. When everyone's on the same team, things tend to be smooth. But after 67, opposition parties started winning state elections. And suddenly, you had different teams on the field, which, as you can imagine, led to a whole lot of friction.
9. Remember this number. It's absolutely key. In the 1967 elections, the Congress Party lost power in 9 states. This was a huge deal. It was the moment the idea of single-party dominance just shattered, paving the way for a much more competitive and, confrontational political era.
And right away, the tug-of-war really began. These new state governments, run by different parties, started to push back hard. They felt that New Delhi had way too much power and was interfering in their business. This was the beginning of the constant demand for more state autonomy.
So, these demands for autonomy pop up in a few key areas. Let's start with the first, and probably one of the most controversial flashpoints: the role of the governor. Okay, so here's the problem. The governor is supposed to be the constitutional head of the state, right? But they're appointed and can be fired by the central government. This creates this deep suspicion that the governor isn't a neutral umpire, but is actually an agent for the center, a tool to undermine the state government, maybe by sitting on important bills and sending them to the president.
All right, moving on from constitutional roles. The next major battleground is, you guessed it, money. The power of the purse. How financial resources are divided up is a constant source of trouble.
See, states rely heavily on the center for money, things like shared taxes and grants. This automatically creates a power imbalance. And you constantly hear these allegations that the center plays favorites, using money as a carrot and stick to reward friendly states and punish the opposition.
This brings us to our third and kind of the biggest area of tension: this feeling that the center is constantly encroaching on the state's turf. It goes way beyond just the governor or money. It's about the very erosion of a state's right to govern itself.
The center has a whole toolkit it can use to assert its authority. The most extreme tool, of course, is imposing president's rule under Article 356. But there are others, like controlling the top bureaucrats, sending in central forces, or even making laws on subjects that are technically supposed to be handled by the state. From a state's perspective, each one of these feels like a threat.
And listen, this isn't just theory. Think back to the COVID-19 pandemic. Public health is a state subject, but the center issued nationwide guidelines for everyone. A lot of states argued back, saying, hey, we know our local situation best. Your one-size-fits-all approach isn't working here, and that created some serious friction.
So, with all these problems, it's only natural that people have tried to find a solution, right? Over the years, there have been many attempts to diagnose the problem and find the right medicine to fix this relationship.
Now, this is a great way to remember it for your exams. Think of this constant friction as the illness, the bimari, that's plaguing our federal system. And the different high-powered commissions that were set up? Well, they were the proposed medicine, the dawai, prescribed to try and cure it. And there have been several major attempts to find a cure. We had the Administrative Reforms Commission, the Rajamannar Committee, the hugely influential Sarkaria Commission in the 80s, and more recently, the Punchhi Commission. Each one of these took a deep dive into the problems and suggested ways forward.
And here's the kicker. The goal of all these recommendations was to build a real framework for cooperative federalism. But the problem isn't a lack of good ideas. The real challenge has always been the political will to actually implement these suggestions consistently.
So, I'll leave you with this thought. As these very same tensions continue to play out today, whether it's about finances or the governor's role, which of these commissions' recommendations do you think is the most important for India's future? It's a really critical question, and it gets right to the heart of what kind of country we want to be. Keep thinking about it.